Hi everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Today we are continuing on with my favourites and non-favourites of the first half of 2022, and today we are looking at that one non-favourite video that I do in this series. So today we're looking at my non-favourites, the 5 books that just didn't do it for me for one reason or another. Now, to make it on this list, these books had to be books that disappointed me, yes, but they also had to be books that I actually completed from start to end. Because if I DNF'd a book, then I didn't finish it, so I maybe didn't give it enough of a chance. But if I finished the book and it was a disappointment, then it probably made it onto this list. So let's get right on into it, shall we? Welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads! Yes, hello and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. I am so honoured that you've chosen to join me once again today. Let's jump right in. Alright, so the first book on this list, these are in no particular order, it's just 5 books. They were all disappointing to me, but the first book on this list is this book, The Vampire Knitting Club, okay, by Nancy Warren. So, this book incredibly let me down, and a big part of the reason for this is a bit of a backstory. So, I had heard of this series floating around, and the idea just sounded amazing. A vampire knitting club. I mean, it just, oh my gosh, it just sounded way too good to be true. So, I did some research and I found out that Nancy Warren, after writing a certain amount of these books, actually went back and wrote a prequel novella, that is book 0.5. So I decided to pick up that book first, which is Tangles and Treason, and Tangles and Treason was one of my absolute favourites reads for the first half of 2022. It did not read like a cozy mystery, it read more like a vampire paranormal type story and explained the origins of at least one of the characters, and I loved it so much that I couldn't wait to get into this one. Unfortunately, this one really did let me down. When I go into a cozy, I really want to explore the cozy side of that cozy. So a cozy mystery, the genre has 2 terms, cozy and mystery. There are 2 aspects, and the cozy side will generally see us following the protagonist doing their day-to-day job. This series being called the Vampire Knitting Club series, I was hoping to get a lot of vampire stuff going on, a lot of knitting stuff going on, and it just really didn't work out that way. While there are vampires in the book, and while I did appreciate that, I think maybe because it's a cozy, I mean, I don't know, I've read some paranormal cozies that are fantastic, but maybe because it's a cozy, they didn't want to go too deep in the vampire side of it. But, I mean, it's literally a series called the Vampire Knitting Series, so, I mean, and as for the knitting side, our protagonist runs a yarn store, again, bequeathed by someone who passed away, since it tends to be the norm in a cozy series. And the problem here is that our protagonist knows nothing about knitting or yarn. She has no interest in it. She's said that multiple times throughout the book. And because of that, and because we follow her perspective, we don't get a lot of information about knitting and yarn and things like that because the protagonist just doesn't care enough about it. And so it just really didn't work for me. Look, normally if I don't like book 1 in a cozy mystery series, I give book number 2 a go, but I just didn't with this one. I just felt so incredibly let down after reading book number 0.5, the prequel. But Yeah, it was what it was. I did not give out 1 star to any books so far this year, so none of the books I read were terrible. I think this got like a 2 from me. It's just a series that I don't want to continue on with. Okay, next up we have An Eggnog to Die For by Amy Pershing. This specifically is book number 2 in the Cape Cod Foodie Mystery Series. And this book really let me down. I need to premise my discussion about this book by saying that I actually loved book number 1 to the point that it's actually displayed. You can kind of just see it there in the corner. And I loved book 3. I read it this month and I loved it. But book 2 just felt like such a lull to me. I don't know what happened. It didn't feel as cozy to me as a cozy mystery should feel. And, you know, I've had in-depth discussions with readers who have read many, many, many more cozies than me, who have told me that there are all different types of cozies as far as the level of coziness in the book. And that's absolutely fine. For me, I'm looking for cozy books that are extremely cozy, because to me, the point of calling a genre cozy should be that it's going to be cozy. And while the cover of this book is extremely cozy, that does not mean that the contents on the inside was. This book to me read more like a 10% cozy and 90% mystery, and honestly, I'm the type of person that if you're going to write a book like that, then why not just release it as a mystery as opposed to a cozy mystery, and then I'll enjoy it because I'm going in knowing it's a mystery, not going in assuming it is, as it's been labelled, a cozy mystery. So there's really not a lot that I want to or need to say about this one. There's a coin that has been termed on booktube, which is middle book syndrome. Like, if it's a trilogy, then the middle book is, you know, not the best. And that was definitely the case with this one. I am glad that Amy Pershing wrote a phenomenal first and third book, but the second book, it just incredibly let me down. It wasn't anywhere near cozy enough. But I did end up continuing on and completing the series, for which I'm thankful, but book number 2 just wasn't for me. Next up is this book, Basket Case by Nancy Haddock. This is book number 1 in the Silver Six Crafting Mystery Series. And same thing here with this book as was with An Eggnog to Die For by Amy Pershing. It just really wasn't cozy enough for me. I went into this book so extremely excited because the series is promoted as or described as a series that deals with this elderly group of 6 people who do a lot of crafting, and that made me incredibly intrigued to pick it up. And the cover is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, they say don't judge a book by its cover, and sometimes they get it right. But yeah, this one was really tough for me to read, and a lot of us read this book when it was announced that Tiffany from the Beach Bum Bookworm and myself were reading it. A lot of people came on board and read it, and I think most of us were disappointed by the first book. Not everyone was, but most of us were, and I think again it was because of the fact that we were let down by the lack of coziness in the book. So this book literally opens up with a mystery. In fact, within the first paragraph, our protagonist, whose nickname is Nixie, is phoned by a detective to find out what the heck is going on with her auntie, because something's going on down there and she needs to go and work out what it is. So we are literally thrown into this world from the very first paragraph, being set up with the mystery. And so here I am trying to work out, okay, where's the cozy side? And to me, I just felt like it just didn't happen, because Nixie is so focused on trying to solve this mystery, and she ends up solving that mystery, and then another mystery is born from that mystery that she has to go and solve, which was, again, fine. Once again, that's not an issue if you're going to publish your book as a mystery book, as opposed to publishing it as a cozy mystery book. But at the same time in saying that, yeah, for a cozy mystery book, it just really did not work for me. And as far as the cozy side being promoted and described as it being about this group of 6 elderly people who were doing some crafting, where was the crafting? The crafting just wasn't there, and it just incredibly let me down. I did somehow decide to continue on with the series, and I can say that it got better as time went on. I gave this book 2 stars, I gave book 2 3.5, and I think I gave book 3 4 stars, so it did get a whole lot better over time. But my problem with this book was the same as with the last one I showed you. It's a cozy mystery that just really wasn't cozy. It was full-on mystery, so it just didn't make any sense to me, and I am the type of reader that loves to go in blind when it comes to a premise, but I always go in knowing the age rating and the genre of a book, and with that, for me, comes certain expectations. If those expectations aren't met, it can very much be a letdown for me. So I feel like book 1 was just miscategorized. If you plan on reading this book, go into it thinking of it as an adult mystery book, not an adult cozy mystery book. But books 2 and 3 were extremely cozy, so if you're wondering about whether or not to continue on and you have read this one, I do recommend it because it does get better as you do go along. But that's why Basket Case by Nancy Halleck made it to my least favourite books for the first half of 2022. Alright, next up, we have a book that I had to read for university. For those of you who don't know, I am currently at university doing a literature degree, and this is one of the books that we were given to read. So, of course, I added it to my monthly TBR, and it was just such a disappointment for me, and that is this book, The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Now, it's interesting, there is another book that I could have added to this list that I'm just thinking of now, that came from my university syllabus. I'm not going to, I'm just going to stick with the one, but there is so much that I could say about this book, so let's begin. This is a book that is literally about a bug, and while that may sound incredibly enticing and even have you, having flashbacks to, what was that Pixar movie, A Bug's Life or whatever, which was such a fun film to watch, this is nothing like that. This is an incredibly depressing and dark book, and my biggest frustration with this book began very early on. And that was because we are following a guy who has been turned into a bug. He's been transformed into a bug before the book begins. So when we first start reading the book, or when anyone picks up the book and starts reading it, this guy's already a bug. And there is no explanation as to why he is a bug, and no explanation as to how he became a bug. And as someone who used to be an incredibly massive fan of fantasy, it annoys me that Franz Kafka had this opportunity to really get into some massive world building by explaining the how and the why, and it was just never addressed. Our protagonist, as a bug, ends up making his way out of his bedroom with a lot of difficulty, and his family accept that he is a bug. Then, very early on in the book, they decide not to because they can't cope with the fact that he's a bug, and so they mourn the loss of him as though he is already dead, despite the fact that he isn't. He's just a bug, and the protagonist is living his life as a bug with no one seeming to care for him. And he ends up having a very tough experience owing to this. And as the book progresses along, it just gets darker and darker and darker. And unsurprisingly, our character goes through a massive bout of depression and just starts spiraling. And I don't want to reveal the end because it is such a spoiler, so I won't. I'll just say that there was no happy ending. I'll say that much because it's a disappointing read. And when I hear the words, this is a book about a bug, and I don't know the reality, of course my first thought is, oh, it's about a bug. Oh, that could be rather interesting. But it's really not. It's just a really incredibly dark and depressing book that isn't that interesting at all. In fact, I spoke to a friend of mine not long after I read this book, and told her that I'd read it, that I'd read a book called The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, and she came back to me and she said, oh yeah, that's the book that they talk about on that TV show Mum. And I said, wait, what? And I love that show Mum with Christy and Bonnie and everyone else. I love that show so much. I said, what?
I just read my literature final on Metamorphosis.
What's that?
It's an awful book. Guy wakes up one morning and is turned into a giant cockroach, but not like Spider-Man who got bit by a radioactive spider. This guy just wakes up all cockroachy.
So no superpowers?
Nope. Doesn't fight crime, no costume. He's just a bug for no reason.
Can he make other cockroaches do his bidding?
Doesn't even try. He just complains.
So what was your paper about?
I wish I remember.
Literally, Christy was airing exactly what I was thinking. It sounds so interesting with the premise, but it just really wasn't, and it incredibly let me down. To make matters worse, because it was a university book and I had to read it to do an essay on, I couldn't DNF it. I didn't have that option. I had to literally sit through the book. So disappointing for me. It's considered an adult classic. I don't think it's a classic, honestly, but it's, I think, considered a classic because it was written such a long time ago, and it just definitely was not the book for me. So yeah, that's why The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka made it to this list. And now on to the final book in this list, and I just want to reiterate these are in no particular order. They were all disappointments to me, so just because this is the last one doesn't mean it was the worst. Not at all. But the final book on this list is this book, which is Glazed Murder by Jessica Beck. Jessica Beck is a pen name. I forgot the name of the male author who wrote this series, but I was incredibly let down by this book, and I think part of the reason why was because of how intrigued I was by the series as a whole. I don't exactly remember what the series is called. I think it's called like the Donut Shop Mystery Series or something like that. And that very much intrigued me. The idea that I was going to read a cozy mystery series that honestly has so many books in the series, and that it was going to be revolving around a donut shop with donuts. I mean, it had me so incredibly excited. Unfortunately, the reality is that the donut shop is just a backdrop. That's all it is. We are following our protagonist who is running her own independent donut shop, and that while that is absolutely wonderful, I felt that, I'm going to use the pen name here, I felt that Jessica Beck could have delved a lot deeper into this world of her running her donut shop, and it just didn't happen. There were so many, in my opinion, missed opportunities where we could have gone back behind the scenes of the store to see her cooking and other types of, things that she was making. Maybe she came up with a new recipe or something. I don't know. But clearly this series is a culinary cozy series because the series name is the Donut Shop Mystery Series. So you would think that it is going to be all about donuts on the cozy side. And the only donut aspect really of the first book was her selling donuts, which is fine, but to me, and this is again just my own personal opinion because it's my favorites and least favorites of the year, but my own personal opinion is, if all you're going to highlight in a series named The Donut Shop Mystery Series with the donuts is selling the donuts, then maybe we should consider renaming the series, because we're not really highlighting the donuts here in a series that's literally called the Donut Shop Mystery Series. So, I mean, I just don't understand it, honestly. So it incredibly let me down and just did not work for me. I honestly don't know what I rated it in the end, whether it was 2, 2.5 or 3, but it was one of those ratings. And I'm not continuing on with the series because the purpose of me starting this series was because I wanted the donut side of the Donut Shop Mystery Series, and I didn't get it. So I felt no need to continue on. And that's just kind of where it ended for me. So I finished the first book and moved on, and I think I had the book on my SAS list and I replaced it with something else. I honestly don't remember what it was, but I replaced it with something else and moved away from it. But that is it. I don't really tend to be negative on this channel, but I do think that it's a good thing to show both sides of the polarity when it comes to not only the favourites, but also the non-favourites of the first half of 2022. As I said, none of the books I showed you today received 1 star. I think in their own right, they're fine. It's just personal opinion. It wasn't to my taste, or I found certain aspects of what I felt it was going to be confusing compared to what the reality was. But for one reason or another, these books just did not work for me. Fortunately, I was able to make it all the way through to the end of them for one reason or another, at least with one of them because I had to. But they just didn't work for me. And that doesn't mean that if they work for you that I think that's a bad thing. As readers, we all have different tastes. So you love what you love and I'll love what I love. And these books just happen to not work for me. But there we go. Those are my 5 non-favourite books for the first half of 2022. What were your non-favourite books for the first half of the year? Let me know in the comments section below. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it. We'll be continuing on with more favourites and non-favourites in the next one. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, ding, so that you can be notified each and every time I do upload a video. I like to post videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, but honestly I think I'll be posting a lot more because I have a whole lot of videos to bring out for y'all in July. So that's where we'll leave it. Thank you so much for watching. Please do be kind and love one another and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, say it with me, happy reading! Bye everyone!